I'm very glad that Professor Kelber is still with us. You are staying with us for the panel discussion as well, Peter. And we are joined by Katharina Ludewig now from Coca-Cola. She is the Privacy Counsel for EMEA and head of global marketing there as well. So please join me in welcoming all three of our panelists now. And I'm happy that we get to discuss how we can stabilize international transfers once again, because did they used to be? I don't know, maybe also a question that we can answer now. But before we start, because we already heard Professor Kelber's perspective and also what the data protection authorities are doing, what they are publishing to help companies. We heard from Peter that they are privacy preserving technologies in place or in the making, but there's also a cultural change. But Katharina, from your perspective, because Coca-Cola is a global company, you're active on a global scale, but not really a tech company per se, but you need data and you need to transfer data, right? So to start our discussion, I would be very interested in your perspective on the matter. So I'm giving the floor to you first.
So thank you very much, and good afternoon, first of all, to everybody listening in or watching in, and also to my panel colleagues, and of course to you, Rebekka, as well. And thanks very much for having me here. Just a little correction, I'm luckily perhaps as well for the company not head of global marketing, but from a privacy perspective, of course, working together with them. It's otherwise it would be probably a bit surprising what we're doing. But thank you so much for that. Yeah, it's indeed, and I'm pretty sure I'm not telling anything new compared to what Professor Kelber or Peter already were stating. Most probably, I didn't hear everything, but so probably not really new from my side. But definitely, it's a complex and it's a complicated topic, right? Also coming from the global perspective, as you were already saying, Rebekka, it's complicated by laws that are outside of the traditional data protection legislation, such as, right, we always hear it, the security laws. It's further complicated by different legal frameworks that we have globally in place, which need to be monitored and included into the processes. I see at least a lot of developments ongoing globally in this regard, also considering specific ideas, or we are even waiting for further clarification when it comes to international data transfers. Just thinking about Russia or South Africa, Brazil, Saudi Arabia is just new as well. So there's a lot of things ongoing. If we take a look closer at the EU, and I think, Peter, you mentioned it just as well, we all experienced throughout the last years quite a high level of uncertainty, considering a movement, considering all the developments ongoing, may it be safe harbor invalidation, privacy shield invalidation, new standard contractual clauses, the combination now with the Brexit, still using the old ones and waiting for newly published frameworks there. So I think this really leads, what I just stated, to quite a high level of uncertainty, and also thinking about not only, so to say, bigger companies, but exactly as well the medium and smaller sized companies. And I think it's quite important that we get some more certainty and a stable framework in place that everybody knows, so to say, if I'm doing this, then this is right, and stop a bit probably the quite also large amount of workload, right, for all the companies in this regard. And the same, I think, is valid as well for the so-called data subjects, as we also always say technically, right? Because I think for them, it's probably also not always easy to follow what is now right, what is wrong. And I think it is very important to that everybody can also get familiar with what works and what does not, also from, I now say, for example, a consumer perspective, right? Similarly, for, of course, as well valid for employees, not only, but as well. So to summarize it, I believe it's important to achieve more stability and certainty for everyone with regard to international data transfers. And if I take a step back again, coming from a global perspective, we see one key topic or one overarching topic always, whether to choose the strictest compliance and apply it everywhere. But then you always have the question, what is the strictest, right? Is the Chinese law the strictest, or is it the European one? But so we always aim for exactly having one robust standard and taking into consideration different local requirements and of course our core data principles, right? Similarly to what you also mentioned earlier, Peter, trust, transparency, and respect. So we see really trust as one of the very most important drivers of everything that we consider, because it's of course also true for our beverages, but similarly, of course, as well with regard to the data subjects, because in the end, they also decide with whom they're going to share their data. So we want to protect personal information, of course, from misuse by others. And as this may also be a concern of the data subjects with regard specifically as well to international data transfers, this is definitely something that we take very seriously and digest. Also beyond EU, right? Because we see the discussion also popping up not everywhere, but to a large extent as well in other countries. Thank you.
Thank you, Katharina. I always think it's amazing that every discussion about data transfers brings us back to the uncertainty that still is in place. And Mr. Kelber, you mentioned in your keynote that even more than 1 year after the Schrems II decision, there's still so much uncertainty. There's so much going on. There's always something new. Katharina just mentioned the Brexit, of course, is an issue which was kind of solved for the moment with the adequacy decision, but is still kind of wobbly maybe. And the new SECs are now coming or have to be implemented as of today. So there's so much going on. There's always so much uncertainty for corporations, but also for users. So can you tell us maybe a bit more about what data protection authorities are doing to bring us more legal certainty, to bring more clarification into the issues, and to maybe help in implementing all the new rules?
There are different sources of uncertainty in this system. One is the decision of the European Court of Justice, and the idea of that data transferers has to estimate how is the legal situation in the third country, which is almost impossible for small and medium-sized companies to really have a glimpse on that. In parallel with the national governments and the European Commission, which avoids to have a public estimation of the legal situation of some countries to avoid diplomatic clashes with that country. So yes, that's kind of leaving alone the small and medium-sized companies. And we have to find a way for that to have a common understanding, because the supervisory authorities had real world situation in a third country in their decision if this is a lawful data transfer or not. So there is that framework, and the framework is given by the European Court decision, because it's really that case by case. And that's sometimes hard to mention that, even for my fellow panelists when they go to their American headquarters, to make them understand that in Europe, other than US, privacy is not deriving from consumer rights, but from fundamental rights. So the European Commission, the supervisory authorities are not free to act. They have to follow that limitations, and as we see with the safe harbor, and then with the privacy shield decision, if there is a try to have a quick win in that race, then the European Court of Justice will stop that, and we cannot risk that a third time. First, to not avoid the question of what the DBA should do, the government should find a base for adequacy decision. But this will not will not happen without the change of the behavior of the American side for the US European things. There have to have the movement on the side. And on the question of the B2C question, there has to be changes of large software vendors and service vendors, because a number of companies do not even know if there is international data transfer in the services, in the software they use. What can the DPAs do? The one is to really comment on the decision of the European Court to show what this means to the enforcement action of the DPAs. To give examples and best practices, even as an ongoing process of where, in which situations, supplementary measures has been chosen, which in combination with the standard contract clauses, give certainty to a lawful international data transfer. And time by time develop that for as specific cases as possible. We try to establish the BCRs and COCs as instruments. And for my understanding, certification will be even the most important tool of these three, because it will even give small and medium-sized companies to choose on the market GDPR confirm services and software where others has the examined if this is lawful for international data transfers. This will be the next steps even for the next 12 months, and to see a certification system really running in the European Union.
Thank you. I also think that we will be seeing more COCs and hopefully even certification soon. But there are not many in place yet, as you rightly said, Mr. Kelber. It's especially strenuous for small and medium-sized companies. Peter, you're not an SME. You guys at Google, but maybe you can elaborate on what your view is regarding how maybe privacy-preserving technologies or privacy by design can be an element to strengthen and re-stabilize data transfers again, or maybe even come back to one other point you mentioned, because I think that is absolutely important as well. Is there some kind of cultural change regarding data protection, or do you see one coming maybe?
Yeah, well, thank you, Rebekka. You know, look, I think the reality is we live in a world of uncertainty in this space. We may regret it collectively. I think Professor Kelber, Katharina, and I are all saying we're doing the best we can given the state of legal uncertainty. But this state of legal uncertainty has been going on for many years, and I actually think it will continue going on for some time to come. I hope that the transatlantic discussions are productive. But, you know, as Professor Kelber said, this could go back to Luxembourg. We don't know. So given the state of legal uncertainty, you know, I think there's a lot to be done in the world of privacy-preserving technologies. And you know, I'm speaking on behalf of a technology company, so it's natural for me to look at that. And I see some really interesting trends here that don't eliminate the problem, but they're complements to solving the problem. You know, one of them is a trend, this is a technology trend that we're investing in very heavily, that's on-device processing. So, you know, there's been a big trend, as you all know, over the last decade, 15, 20 years, but really gotten very large, of what we call cloud-based processing. And you all know what that is, I don't need to tell you. And it's precisely that cloud-based processing that gives rise to this challenge of international data transfers, because that's what the cloud architecture, by and large, looks like. But there's a new wave coming, and a wave that we're working on, all of our engineers are working on, that I think is extremely exciting, which is a lot of things can now be done on a device. They don't need to be uploaded to a central server of a controller. They don't need to be transferred around. Why is this possible now? Well, it's because the devices have become much more powerful now, right? People's individual devices have processing power that they did not have 5 or 10 years ago. So there's a technology paradigm shift going on that may eliminate the need for a large number of these so-called device to cloud transfers, or cloud from one region to another kinds of transfers. That's the kind of privacy-preserving technology that I think is promising. There are other things that may be a little bit more technical. I don't know if it's right for this audience, but it's things like federated learning across devices, but essentially just taking patterns rather than taking individual identifiable data from devices to create patterns and to learn from. That's what we'll call federated learning. It's an entirely new field, is very promising. Another is differential privacy, which is a mathematical model that looks at patterns and assigns them random numbers, and in a sense creates noise so that the machines can still learn from the data without needing to have individual identifiable data elements in it. So these are new developments of privacy-preserving technology that are going to become, are already well implemented and going to become, I think, much more mainstream in the years ahead. And they may reduce the need for, as I say, cloud transfers and international transfers in general. That isn't to say that that solves the problem, but if you don't upload the data to a cloud, you don't need to worry about an international data transfer. So that's one thing I'm kind of excited about.
Thank you. And Katharina, as Peter just said, you're basically all trying your best right now to find a stable enough basis in these uncertain times for international data transfers. Can you maybe elaborate a bit on what exactly you're doing and how you see your way forward to keep up with globalization and global data transfers as a company?
Yeah, certainly. And I would absolutely second what Peter was just stating. It's really interesting to see the different developments in the market when it comes to privacy-preserving technologies. This is certainly something that we also take a deeper look into it and to see, what's on the market, what may be the industry standards, hopefully in the future, right? What may make things easier. So in this regard, definitely it's really great. Great to see what is going on there. Another point is, and I think this may make it a bit easier from time to time, at least for us. Certainly, we are a multinational company. This is not really a secret. But on the other hand, we still have local entities. We are pretty much also attached to the local market, to the consumer environment that we have locally. So this then on the other hand goes hand in hand as well with also great developments that if I look back the past nearly 10 years, what kind of developments happened there, right? It's much easier definitely to also find service providers that offer, local storage or at least storage within the EU as one example. We have similarly, of course, these kind of challenges, as I already stated in the beginning, in other regions of the world. So we see a lot of movement in this regard as well, which definitely helps from our side. And if there is really a kind of general concept you can apply, I think it's always important. And this is, but also nothing that we start now, right? Of course, it started a couple of years ago already. Not only, but as well due to the EU environment, that you need to be very clear about the processes that you have in place, about the options, how to minimize as well personal information transfer, right? When it specifically comes to cross-border transfer. And so be clear about your data flows, be clear about this overview so you can determine and also apply certain measures, maybe, of course, contractually, maybe technically. This helps, I think, definitely a lot. And for this needs to be accompanied, of course, by having robust processes in place. May it be, data subject rights, by the way, what we also see definitely outside of only, so to say, the EU. And it's really monitor your safeguards that you apply depending on the data. If you transfer them, which kind of data, right? This really makes a huge difference. So I think it's really important to have a good overview over what you are doing and where you are doing it, and if you could change this or adjust certain measures. And I think in this regard, now we call it supplementary measures, right? And this is, I think, the way forward at the moment, that you have a clear picture for you and that you are able to document and apply what is needed.
This know your transfer aspect always reminds me of the colleagues from the banking sector, because know your customer is what they always are saying there. But you just basically described the aspects of how you assess the transfer on the one hand, but also the risk of every individual transfer that is happening. And that kind of brings me back to your keynote, Mr. Kelber, because there was also something you mentioned, because of course we all have to know our transfers, but we do have to assess the specific situation, basically, so what exactly is happening. And so I would really much like to ask you, Mr. Kelber, is that what you are expecting of companies right now to do in this conundrum of transfers? What are your expectations?
So, companies describes a wide variety of actors. So first, maybe to a small and medium-sized company based in Germany, operating worldwide. That's not untypically. And the first thing is to examine which kind of explicit international data transfer is done by the company. For example, transferring human resource personal data from different offices worldwide. To find out where this explicit transfer happens, which are the risks, which is the legal base for that transfer, which could be safeguards and supplementary measures. And you will find out that there are some of these international transfers which can be safeguarded and can still happen, and others you really have to find out different solutions at that time of the political situation. The other problem is the implicit international data transfer, so done by tools and services you use. So you use a video conference system like the one we are using, or using online word processing, as one of my fellow panelists offer, and which kind of implicit personal data international transfer happens in the moment you use this tool for your national business or for your international business. It's really hard for that companies to find that out, to bring that in a line of priorities, which things to handle first, to change first, to find the thing. And so the companies who offer these services and softwares shouldn't wait for maybe the political situation to change, or set any bit in there will be no enforcement by the European data protection authorities, because they found out that sometimes there is no enforcement action, but I don't think it will happen in that part of the field, and don't change the way their services and software works. I think there are opportunities to change this ways. That means the end to some of the business cases, or at least a change to the business cases. But I was really happy to hear about things like distributed learning, federal systems, which can bring so much clever services and software on a global level to people to work with personal data without really transferring the risk for personal data, but the results out of this personal data, which is needed to handle globally. So there are a number of technologies which can change that services and software in a way that the small and medium-sized companies can pick, especially if they are certified in the end.
Thank you. I can see there's a lot going on in our chat as well, and I see a lot of questions about specific measures, about specific implementations of the TIA, so the Transfer Impact Assessment. And maybe this is also a good opportunity to mention that we'll be having a 1-hour session on exactly that tomorrow. So I hope we'll be able to answer a lot of those questions then as well, because we only have a few minutes left, and I would like to give Peter and Katharina the opportunity to tell us what they are or what are their expectations of the data protection authorities, because both your companies are globally active from a different point of view. So maybe Peter, will start with you. What would you expect the data protection authorities to do to help companies that are using your services, or maybe even you yourself at Google?
Well, look, I think the data protection authorities have a very difficult job, and I'm glad to be doing the job of a privacy officer at a company. That's what I spend my time worrying about. So we're focused on these new kinds of technologies to derive insights from data without processing personal data, those that I mentioned before, differential privacy, federated learning, and many others. We're working in the cloud to look at ways to make sure that data can be subject to encryption, accessible only by the people who are entitled to access it and not by the platform providers like us, ourselves. So it isn't really a transfer issue. I look at this from the point of view very much also these kinds of technical solutions to these issues. I'm not a politician, that's for other people to worry about. We are a global actor. We know that we need to have a kind of international solution here, but we're not going to put all our eggs in the basket of hoping for political solutions. There are technical solutions to what at the beginning were technical problems, and kind of understand what those are. And as Katharina pointed out before, there's a lot of discussion about the European-US debate, but this is very much a global debate. This is very much an issue that pops up all over the place. So, I look at this from the point of view of what can technology do to solve this problem, and how can technology focus on the end user, what we in privacy world call, as Katharina said, the data subject, that is the user, to figure out how to create the right things here. I'm not, to be honest, looking at the data protection authorities to solve a problem that is not of their making. I think that's an unrealistic expectation. I think they've shown a lot of wisdom in understanding that this problem is legal, cultural, European Court of Justice, international relations kind of multi-dimensional problem that affects different actors in different regions, big and small companies very differently. So there's no one solution here. My approach is let's focus on the technology and add as much solutions as we can to an area where that won't be the full solution, but it'll be a part of it anyway.
Thank you, Peter. Katharina, what is your view?
Yeah, first of all, I can just second what Peter just stated, right? And I'm also glad that I'm not in the DPA needing to find, so to say, a solution. But we're certainly happy to hear a lot about that development. Well, I think it's I do not want to repeat everything that Peter said, but I think it's really important that we also focus on that we can trust every data subject, every user, and so forth. That and I think this is also something where I sometimes think like, probably we can really emphasize a lot the transparency factor as well, because I think users are able also, coming from a market perspective, to decide which company they want to give their data, if they have the feeling they are informed and they know what will be done with their data, if there will be additional safeguards applied and so forth. So this is something I believe that can also be strongly emphasized, the whole transparency factor. I think it's what Professor Kelber already stated earlier as well. Of course, I think we're all aligned that all companies want to adhere to the legal and regulatory requirements. This is not the point. And I think definitely you cannot find a one size fits all, but I could imagine as well that to a certain degree, DPAs could help clarifying exactly the different requirements and finding out a more stable level in case, I don't know, for example, with something as Professor Kelber already stated, kind of, you know, building kind of use cases, right? And if you do this, then it's fine. If you do this, then it's fine. And exactly specifically taking into account the medium and smaller size companies. So I think this is definitely something that that I'm looking forward to see more. And what I also heard from Professor Kelber's words, that this engagement also with the service providers, right? To help, so to say, by doing so, a broad community of controllers as well to adhere to, you know, everything that will be upcoming, that we have as a kind of development. I think this would be something that I would welcome very much as well.
Looks to me like we all have certain jobs to do now, right? So yeah, I'll let you go back to it now. So thank you so much, all three of you, really, because I think you provided great insights in what you're doing right now, but also what can be expected from all of us, from all of you, in the future. Because as Mr. Kelber absolutely rightly stated, this will be a topic for a while. So thanks for being here today, for taking the time, for sharing your insights. If you have a few more minutes and maybe want to answer a few questions in the chat, please feel free to do so. Otherwise, I think we'll be seeing each other soon. But for now, thanks and goodbye.